not necessarily about quantity as it is about quality. You're really reaching your number one diehard fans.
Hey, Sarah, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to talk to you today and get this conversation going.
Absolutely. I'm quite interested in today because it's one of the first time that, we talk about not primarily like social media, like, as public information, right? But more about like, communities that use, other ways to communicate with their followers, to sell things online, merchandising, concerts, events, and so on, right? But before we get into that, usually ask, three main questions to my guest following this structure called MAP, right? And, just to know a bit more, more about yourself. And basically it's divided in three ways. It's like mission, achievements, and purpose. So the first one, primarily, it is like, what do you aim to achieve, right? Professionally, personally. The second one is the achievement. So any milestone, right? In your life, your work that you're really proud of. And the last one is the purpose. So basically why you do what you do.
Yeah. So I can talk a little bit about, what I want to achieve. I think ultimately in my career, like what I want to achieve is building really meaningful and impactful brands. I think as a marketer, building a brand that really makes an impact on the world is something that we all are looking to achieve. So I think from my perspective, that's a really big focus for me. And I think when talking through kind of my achievements, kind of goes back a little bit, but kind of where I started in my career and why I started in my career. I grew up, around a lot of small businesses. My grandfather owned convenience stores. My aunt owns a consignment store. My great uncle owned a fried chicken shop. I grew up a lot around small businesses and talking a lot about business and how marketing and brands can really impact that business. And I think when I was in high school, I actually took like a marketing class at University of Maryland. And that's when I really realized that marketing wasn't just a creative role, which is how I kind of always envisioned it as a young person. It's kind of this combination of creative and analytics that I think I really was looking to achieve. So from there, I kind of started to focus on that. I went, and focused on business and marketing in college. And I started at Time Inc., which is now Dotdash Meredith, in the customer acquisition side, working to support the magazine's Food and Wine and Travel and Leisure. And that was such a big kind of learning point for me of figuring out like how much marketing touches. And I think that's like what I love about marketing as a whole is you're involved in every piece of the puzzle, working with departments, across the board. And from there, I actually started working at my first startup called The Tilt, which was a media company focused on Gen Z and millennials. And I was the first marketing hire, and I got to build out that team there, which was really cool to do, and kind of build the social profiles there, the brand and the social followings. And that was such an important piece of my puzzle and what I accomplished. And from there, I went to Subtext, which is where I am now, the SMS platform. And I was, once again, the first marketing hire, built out the team, not just the marketing team, but helped build out the team as a whole, which was great because I was there from the pretty early days. And we've built out a brand that I'm really proud of. That's, won things like Digiday Award for Best Subscription Product, most innovative companies from Fast Company. We've just done a lot of really cool things and worked with also just so many cool brands and clients from, the Maren Morris and Miley Cyruses of the world to the New York Times and Washington Post. So I think those have been kind of the most, rewarding parts of my career is kind of working with these amazing clients and being able to help them kind of reach their goals. And then for the kind of, why you do what you do. I think ultimately human connection is at the forefront of marketing. And I think, at Subtext, that's really what we're focused on. So it's been a really cool kind of way to bridge those two together. We're really focused on bridging the gap between creators, brands, organizations, and their biggest fans and audiences. And I feel really fulfilled to be able to kind of help creators and brands do that. And then that helps support them as well as supporting audiences alike to be able to connect with those people that they care most about.
Amazing. And, since at the beginning you said about small businesses, I'm curious, before we get into Subtext and telling to the audience what it is and go into SMS, any lessons that you learned there? Because when you have a small business, you work in a small business, you have a lot of hats on your head, right? And you see a lot of department, a lot of things. You have to talk with people, you have to, fix mistakes on a daily basis, right? So what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned so far that you brought in now into Subtext?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest lessons from a small business is to be nimble and be able to your point, you wear every hat,
Yeah.
And there is a challenge every single day. And to have the ability to be nimble is a gift. And then one of the gifts of a small business in that sense, you don't have that red tape to go through for everything. You're the person making those decisions. And trusting your gut in that sense of okay, a problem's coming in, I can fix it, and I have the ability to do that, and having that kind of confidence is really important. And I think those things I brought into kind of working in the startup world, right? It's you have a small team, you have big ideas, problems are happening left and right, and you need to go in and be okay, how are the nimble ways that I can approach this? Who can I bring on to help me out? How can I offload and onload people onto different projects to make this work? I think that the biggest thing for small businesses is it's a yes and. You're going to figure out okay, yes, we can do this, and this is how we're going to get it accomplished, and accept that you're going to figure it out, and it will end up working out.
Yeah, I know, problem solving, it's crucial, right? You cannot be yeah, someone else will do that. No, it's you that have to fix the issues there. And now, so after that experience now at Subtext, if you had to give an elevator pitch about the company, just in a few words, what would it be about?
Sure. So Subtext is an SMS platform that focuses on bridging that gap between, creators and organizations and their biggest audiences. And it's a way to do it directly and immediately at scale. And without the clutter of email and the chaos of social media, you're able to text your biggest fans, and reach them 98% of the time. I think that's one of the really cool parts of SMS is you own that relationship to your audience and your subscribers, and you're able to reach them actually every time, which is super different than, social media and super different than email. So that's I'd say the little bit.
And then thank you for that. So you already mentioned it's mostly to owning your audience, right? Because many times on social media, if the algorithm changes, who knows who you're gonna reach. Sometimes your video can be shadow banned. Sometimes the notification doesn't work.
Yep.
So do you think that is the main reason why, or do you think there are also other reasons why creators and potentially also brands working with creators are moving also to SMS? That sometimes when you think about it, was oh, it's such a old technology, but it's getting back, right? Because people cannot you receive any more notification. There are so many emails, they getting spam and so on. So is that the main reason why? Again, or do you think there is also something else there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a big piece of it. It's creators have spent so much time investing time and resources in building these audiences, and they've had these amazing fans. And they don't actually, I think everyone's learning they're not actually owning those relationships because, to your point, the algorithm changes. I think that's a big piece of it. I think another piece of it that I think is really important is, texting is so personal, right? And by having the ability to reach those audiences in their phone, which is a space reserved for people that they trust, you ultimately are becoming someone that they trust more, and that relationship just gets deeper. And I think that's something that's really unique to SMS that doesn't really exist elsewhere. And I think there's also a big piece of it that's the two-way communication that you don't have elsewhere. when you tweet at your favorite creator, you're not really expecting a response. How often have you responded to an email newsletter? Probably, and if you have, did you expect a response? No. But in SMS, the way that we've built Subtext in particular, it really is about two-way communication and finding ways to listen to your audience at scale. So I think that's a really unique aspect to what SMS provides.
Hello! Is your brand ready to amplify its reach? Well, the Influencer Marketing Factory is here to do just that. We are a global influencer marketing agency helping brands ignite their growth, from influencer identification to campaign strategy, handling legalities and agreements to managing shipping and logistics. We have it all covered. We work with hundreds of brands across different verticals, from Fortune 500 companies to DTC brands. And we don't just stop there. With detailed ROI analysis, we help brands like yours measure success, transforming impressions into actionable conversions. You can find us at the influencermarketingfactory.com or just search the Influencer Marketing Factory on Google.
And, before you said about the open rate, like being 98%, right? There is crazy numbers. If you think that, again, as you said, newsletters many times, they have like maybe 40, 50% if it goes well, reply rate, it doesn't exist, basically, as you said, right? In newsletters, of course. The reply rate in maybe cold emailing is like 1%, usually depends on how good you are. So in addition to the open rate, and you said that people can also like reply, is there any other metrics that you either know that you can share, or any other like things that you usually, like any KPIs from creators that you usually like try to track in order to be like, okay, this is successful, this was not?
So like you said, the SMS has a 98% open rate. I think what's also really cool is that 96% of those texts are read within 3 minutes. And I think that's really a powerful statistic to show how it's not just direct communication and it's immediate. And I think from a creator perspective, that immediacy is really important when you're, dropping a new video, you're dropping a new podcast episode or new album, that immediacy of people actually reading that message, right when you send it is impactful to your numbers from a, creative perspective. Outside of that, we also have, one of the highest in terms of engagement rate. So our engagement rate is upwards of 20% across all campaigns. I think that has to do with the fact that, like I said, people are actually reading these messages. And inherently, it's a two-way communication. So people, are used to replying to text messages and are expecting responses. That's typically how texting works. So that click-through rate is also incredibly high at 20%. So when you compare that to, for example, TikTok, which is, I think right now the highest engagement platform in terms of social, they're at 4% engagement rate. Email click-through rates are 3%. So I think, when you compare against those, you really learn that what SMS provides is yes, direct communication and immediate, but also that direct communication with your biggest fans and your most loyal subscribers. So it's not necessarily about quantity as it is about quality. You're really reaching, your number one diehard fans and able to send them things like merchandise. You're able to send them, like I said, like your latest YouTube video you've posted or your latest podcast episode that just dropped. Things like that you can serve. And in between those, you're able to kind of bring them into the conversation of being like, hey, do you have questions you want us to answer on the next podcast? Hey, what do you think of this video? Do you think it's worth us like pursuing this idea? Like we've had creators do things like that where they really bring their fans into the creative process, which I think is a really interesting way to go about it. We actually worked with a podcaster called Buckeye Talk, their sports podcast. And we also have paid SMS channels. So what they did is they charged their listeners $3.99 a month. And they offered a 14-day free trial. And what was really interesting was that 67% of their listeners converted to full-time payers after the 14-day trial.
A lot.
Yeah. And they are seeing, upwards of $50,000 in revenue a year. And what they provide through the channel is direct access to the hosts, exclusive content, and they collect questions for episodes that they'll read on the next, podcast. So there's some really interesting work that creators have done on the platform that is inspiring, to say the least.
Like, what are some of the other use cases? Again, like, I saw on the website that is like, selling tickets for concerts, selling merchandising and so on. What are the things that you're seeing, like, having the most traction? And also if you can share any specific case studies, just for, for us, for the audience to understand, like, okay, this was like a great one that, with great numbers.
Yeah. So yeah, we did the work with Miley Cyrus, which was really interesting. We basically started with driving tune-in for the NBC's Miley New Year's Eve party, which was cool. She used it as a way to, have people tune into that. And ultimately, she promoted her new single through the platform and on the show. And then ultimately her album. And then to your point of merchandise, she had encouraged people to order pre-orders for her limited release vinyl album. That was a really interesting way because she kind of built that excitement over time and used it as a way to create really genuine, meaningful engagement with fans and give them exclusive content. So that was a really interesting one. I think another example is actually how we've worked with one of our creators. His name is Paul, and he actually had his own Facebook group where he was providing sports handicapping picks. And he realized, he was building a solid followership and he wanted to monetize it. And I think he basically built his business on Subtext. So now he charges, I think it's like $100 a month. And he contacted, all the people through his Facebook group to sign up. And he's now generating I think above at this point, $22,000 a month through creating this SMS channel where he's sending, specialized picks every day directly to people's phones. And he's fostering really genuine connections. He actually used it really interestingly to collect money to fundraise for a charity he was working on. He's done some really interesting work with it. But that's kind of like a more interest, a little bit of a different of a use case where he really built his entire business using just Subtext. And he's been, really successful and built such a strong community there.
And let's continue on this, right? So creator monetization, right? We, spoke about this on the podcast several times. There are so many ways nowadays, right? There is no excuse, I would say, to be like, oh, I cannot make this as a living, because actually you can, right? And we said about subscription model. You can say about, exclusive content.
Yeah.
We can talk about selling merch and so on. Again, let's talk a bit more about this. What are some of the use cases, right, that people are using SMS with? Is there anything else that maybe people usually, apart from the common one that we can also talk about, but is there anything else that you noticed, be like, oh wow, I didn't know that people actually were making money with SMS in this way? Have you found anything interesting out there?
Yeah, I think one of the ways that I found really interesting, it was actually a newsroom that did it, but they got businesses to sponsor their text messages. So if you think about it, it makes a ton of sense. You have this direct line of communication to your biggest fans. Why wouldn't a brand want to sponsor that? Once again, they're reading it 98% of the time. They're your most engaged fans. So we've had it a few different ways. One, which is sponsoring individual messages. So it'll say powered by Toyota. Or we've had, oh, this week is brought to you by XYZ, or sponsoring the entire channel. So, hey, this is, Sarah Schmidt's channel brought to you by Dasani. I don't know why that came to mind, but, those I think are some really interesting ways of, you don't have to necessarily muddy the waters of communication with your audience, but it can still feel like an authentic way to incorporate a brand and monetize that audience. I think that was one of the more, interesting ways, because to your point, we have paid subscriptions, which is awesome. We have merchandise and tours and things like that were really interesting. But seeing, multiple creators have success with finding sponsors for their messages was really an exciting moment for us to see and be able to package that up and help creators in that sense.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Because you have the same in newsletters, you have the same in YouTube videos, right? You have the same in podcasts, right? That, as you said, could be a specific episode or like the entire series, right? The season. So it does make sense. Have you seen, like, is it primarily like text messages? Do they have like links? Do we have like, tell us a bit more also like the best practices? Because for instance, like, whenever, all the time that we work with our own talents, we recommend, like, of course, do not post an ad every single time, right? Because people are going to be pissed, right? And, try to add like, different type of formats and so on, so that people are always really excited, right? To receive your messages, your, notifications. What are some of the best use cases there and practices when it comes to, again, using SMS, not to, feel like spammy, but actually entertaining still your audience?
The biggest thing that we say is to make it conversational and to make it casual. Once again, like I said earlier, you're entering a really personal space on your fan's phone, and you want to make sure you're not, to your point, sending link after link after link, driving people elsewhere. You want to bring them into the conversation and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Do you guys have any advice for this? I think we have a lot of, we work with a lot of companies that use us for recommending products, which I think is always an interesting, use case. So they're like, hey, what kind of products are you looking to find deals for or reviews for? And they're able to take that in and start that conversation. I think when you do want to send links and things like that, I think they're really pretty well received, as long as they're obviously applicable, of interest to the subscriber. And that's where kind of the segmentation kind of comes into play of how you message out things. But I think ultimately, best practice wise, it's really about making it conversational, making it casual, and making it come from a point of view. So a lot of our campaigns, we stress the idea of signing it from someone. And one of the things we have as well is a contact card. So every message that comes from someone is coming from a 10-digit number, and we send a contact card that they can save in their phone that has an image, has a name, so it doesn't feel like spam. It feels like it's coming from your favorite creator, because it is, and they happen to be in your phone.
And what about audio messages and video? Is it also something that usually they send out, or they prefer to stay more like static / text?
No, we have video. People send video, people send audio, both are options. We also actually have a voicemail feature. So you can set up either a custom voicemail where you can have fans call in and leave you voicemails, or you can set up a phone tree where, you can have different options. So I think a good example is we worked with Maggie Rogers, and she did such an interesting phone tree where one of them was kind of a sneak peek to one of her new songs, and another was allowing fans to leave voicemails. And what she did is she took the voicemails and she did a live reaction on TikTok to those voicemails. Wow. So she was actually showing that she was listening, and it's a way to kind of show your fans you're actually there and listening to those voicemails and create that kind of fan generated content, which I think is insanely impactful and really interesting. And we've seen a lot of creators use the voicemail feature in a really impactful way.
That's amazing. Like, it reminds me another episode. We were talking about, athletes and sport people, like, reacting with like their fans, or like do like live streaming with their fans who are reacting at actions of a team. Like, yeah. It was like, it's amazing how nowadays you can really, like, in a brilliant and easy way, create content, just reacting on other content. Yep. And it's very juicy. It's very like, peer-to-peer as type of experience. So I see that why it can be very impactful. And still talking about creators, there are so many, right? Podcasters,
yeah,
TikTokers, Instagrammers, YouTubers, bloggers, Twitchers. So many.
Yeah.
Have you noticed a category that is like having the biggest lift using SMS, or is it like across the board?
I would say it's across the board. I think because creators at their core are so focused on community building, as they should be, right? That's why they got to where they are, by building these impactful communities. And SMS is I think one of the most engaging ways to create those communities, right? I think especially in the past few months, as we've seen creators kind of trying to figure out new ways to invest in offline platforms, we've seen a variety, of creators do really well. I think lately, we've been doing a lot of work with podcasters because I think, having that immediate and direct access to their most engaged listeners has allowed podcasters to really bridge that gap between episodes, collect audience questions, like I mentioned, and promote new episodes. And I think ultimately, like I said, building communities is of utmost importance to all creators. And because SMS has that personal connection that a lot of other platforms don't allow, it's been a real success in that space, and we're excited to continue to expand in that space.
Amazing. I can see like how kind of everyone now wants to own the audience, and that's why I was like wondering if there was anyone specific, but I can see that no matter in which like platform you are, you want to bring it like offline, if you can call it like that, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense on that. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you today that are either like excited about, or something that you're like following closely lately?
I think overarchingly, just watching the creator economy like continue to pivot away, and I don't think actually away is the right word for it, but pivoting towards creating and diversifying their revenue streams has been really interesting to watch. And I think finding ways to take those social audiences that are important, and finding ways to take them elsewhere to monetize them has been interesting. Whether it's through SMS, which obviously I think is awesome, or through merchandising, like this Beast then, it's been a really interesting thing to watch. And I think we're going to continue to see them try to leverage other platforms and opportunities, because you can't rely on these social platforms to build businesses anymore. Not just because of, to your point, like the algorithm changes and things like that, but they're also not brand safe. So brands aren't looking to play in them anymore, especially obviously the X/Twitters of the world. And Meta even has its challenges as well from a brand safety perspective. TikTok as well, whether it's, the bans going on and things like that, brands are becoming more hesitant to be engaged in creators, platforms in that sense. So how can creators find other avenues to earn revenue that feels safe to brands? And I think SMS obviously I think is an amazing way to go about that. And I think merchandising as a whole has become a big business. Events for creators has become a big business. And I'm excited to continue to watch those kind of avenues continue to grow.
No, absolutely agree 100%. And before it was nice to have to think about your revenue stream and how to diversify them. Now it's becoming a must.
Yeah.
Right. You have to. If you don't do that, not put it you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right? So it makes absolutely sense that creators are looking for other ways, right, to have different revenue, and also sometimes make it a bit more stable, right, compared to the brand deal maybe once in a while and so on. So it makes sense for that. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today, for sharing more about data and metrics about the SMS world, for creators, for podcasters, sports people, people entertainment. I saw on the website that you offer the service for many different categories there. So, quite interesting to see, again, different ages, different, people on Earth that can actually use the same medium to get to the right people. So thank you for sharing that and for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it and appreciate it. Feel free to have me back if you're interested.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. This was the Influence Factor by the Influencer Marketing Factory, and I'll see you next week.